Thank you, Anthony. Can y'all hear me okay? I don't think I'll be using this. I would like to, but I've got so many notes. I usually don't do this, but I have had the hardest time. And I'll tell you, it really, I say this every year, and it's the truth. I mean, after the graduates speak, how do you follow that? I mean, every year, this year, no exception. I mean, it's just an impossible act to follow, and I always like to listen to each person, and I know they're not the only ones with stories. You know, the one thing I remember is Andrew, I believe, said he was basically apologizing for having a boring testimony. There's no boring, that was not boring for sure, but there's no boring testimonies, are there? Like Anthony said, when the wind blows, young people give their hearts to Christ. There's nothing boring about that. And I know there are many others in here that have their own stories. And there'll be times I know that you'll be called upon to share those stories. Lucas, man, I loved your honesty, man. Things you struggle with, all those things, I heard them all. And trust me, I can identify. I struggle still, and I'll be 61 in about three weeks. So it's a struggle. Gracie, you know, I heard what you said, and basically I want to tell you, and I think you'd agree with me. Where's Gracie at? Is she in here? Okay, well anyway, she said something that kind of all roads, she was being taught all roads lead there. And I don't think it's arrogant to believe that Jesus is unlike anyone else. I don't think there's anything arrogant about that. And I got to tell you, I don't believe all paths lead to the peace and joy that she was talking about. And then the three girls, McKinley, Lindsay, and Macy, I don't know if they're in here or not, but those three girls, I was writing something down about each one of them, but then all of a sudden, what struck me about that little trio was how similar that was to my experience. I didn't get saved, or I didn't give my heart to the Lord. I mean, I'd gone to church, and maybe I did when I was younger, but I got to tell you that club they said they belonged to, and I don't remember what they called it, but it was a drinking and party club. I belonged to one just like that when I was in high school and even partly into my college years. And when I finally did bow my knee to the Lord, what was unique, I had these two best friends, Randy and Kenny. We all played high school football together at Reagan High School in Austin, and I love bragging about this, even though it's been over 40 years ago. We were the state and national high school football champions in 1970, and we'd grown up playing football together, and I mean everything, we did everything together. And after I finally bowed my knee to the Lord, one of our friends was tragically killed in a car wreck, and they were coming back from a pretty bad place that they shouldn't have been going, and they ran into a train, and one of them survived and one of them passed away. And I'd given my heart to the Lord, but they had not, and so they were still, I don't remember what kind of chemical they were on that night, but they were, I was with them over at their apartment, and I had since given up my wild ways, or as many as I could. And they were talking about it, and I remember as I was thinking about it, I started weeping. And that really freaked them out. And they said, "Man, what is wrong with you?" And I just said, you know, and I didn't have any theology, I didn't know anything, but all I knew was, I said, "What is wrong with you, man? Why are you crying?" And I said, "I don't know where he's at." And they asked me, "What do you mean?" And then I told them what I meant, and I certainly wasn't in a judgmental manner. I just honestly didn't know, and it broke my heart. And it didn't take long. I don't know. The Lord, the wind blew, and both those two guys gave their heart to Christ. And so it was much like those three. It was like our friends thought we were all crazy, literally, that we'd gone insane because there was such a radical change. And that's not to say we didn't still struggle, but there was a change that they could see. And now we're all friends again, our old buddies. But at that time, at 19, our friends literally thought we'd lost our minds. But it was worth it. It was definitely worth it. And I know all the young people could say the same thing. You know, I've done this, I think we're trying to figure it out maybe 10 times, maybe 9, 10 times. And every year, my biggest fear is this, that nothing I say is going to make sense. I worry about that so much. And for some reason this year, I think I worry about it more than anything. I'm taking this class, believe it or not, I'm taking a class in Dallas. I'm studying to become a private investigator. I'm working for Anthony's youngest brother, Carl. He's a defense attorney in Dallas, and I've been helping him. And so I'm taking this 220-hour class every Friday and Saturday night, and I've got homework. I mean, I thought it'd be a blow-off deal. You pay your fees, you get your B's or whatever, but it's not like that. I mean, they're really serious, these instructors. And so I was working on this thing. I wanted it to be just right, so I stayed up and I typed up copious notes, and then all of a sudden, I was practicing it, and it was just like, I can't do this. And so then last night, I'm in the hotel room. I got in the hotel room at 12:40 at night or in the morning. And so then I said, I can't do it this way. And so then I couldn't find any paper, so all I had was the little notepad here from. So forgive me but I don't know why this time I want it to be just right. And maybe because I know it is going to be the last time. And if nothing else, I want to tell you that I sincerely appreciate this opportunity over the years to be able to come and do this. It means a lot. I was thinking about it, and I've said this to Anthony before. I don't know if it's just the age I'm at or what, but except for maybe being with my family, everything else except doing what I'm getting ready to do right now almost seems a little like a waste of time. Not totally. I mean, there's many things I enjoy doing. I mean, I love still lifting weights and exercising and doing different things. But I remember in college there was something, I took this psychology class, and they taught us Maslow's hierarchy. And what it was a hierarchy of basic human needs. And some of you may know what I'm talking about. And I don't know, there's 6 or 7. I can't even mention them all. But it started out, your basic need is what? You got to have food and water, then shelter. And it goes on up the list. You want acceptance. You want love. I can't remember all. I should have looked it up, but it doesn't matter. The top, I remember this, the very top was called self-actualization. And that's kind of a nebulous term. What is self-actualization? And I was a new Christian, and I was at UT when I took this psychology class, and it was just this high feeling of self-worth. I mean, kind of like you'd arrived. That's the best way I can put it, and somebody may be able to define it better. But to me, the light bulb that went off in my head when I read that was when I have these opportunities that when you're doing something for the Lord or when you're in His presence, I sometimes get frustrated because I'll have these mountaintop spiritual experiences and I'm thinking, oh man, if it'll just stay like this, life will be great. But it never stays quite like that. Do any of you know what I'm talking about? You'll have these just incredible emotional experiences and you feel so at peace and you say, I don't want to leave here. But you do. You have to go back out there. And then all of a sudden, somebody flips you the bird while you're driving or whatever, and I want to pull them over. And, it's like it's gone. But there are those moments of self-actualization. And I think, for me, this is one of those moments. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. If I'm all over the page today, forgive me. It's not my desire. I hope that there's something, just something that'll be said. Let me just say a quick word of prayer, if you'll pray with me. Dear Lord, I pray that you'd bless each one of these graduates and their parents. We're so thankful for them. Thank you for this opportunity, Lord. If you'll just bless me today, Lord, and just would there be something that would touch the hearts of the people that are here so that it would not be a waste of time. I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. There's 3 things I want to try to do. First of all, I want to encourage you. I'm talking to the graduates now, and it's okay, parents too. But I want to warn you about some things, and I want to challenge you. Graduation, Anthony said I was a teacher and a coach. 30 years I did that, and I loved it. I mean, it wasn't all great, but I'll tell you, I did love it. What I loved most of all were the kids. I didn't really love begging teachers for grades or, the parents were great because I was at lower socioeconomic schools and people say, hey man, wasn't that tough? Wasn't that hard? Wouldn't you rather be over here? And I'd say, you know what? I really like it because I think in 30 years, maybe I had 5 parents call and bother me about anything. And I said, the problems that I have, I think, and these friends that are asking me, they say, oh man, how can you coach at Reagan High School or Lanier High School because, high level of lower socioeconomic kids? And I say, man, I love those kids. Those kids need me. They love me. And, and so then I tell them, I said, look, it's a lot easier dealing with them than it would be if you were calling me every week. And they get what I mean. But it was wonderful. And the time of the year that I loved the most was graduation. I mean, there's not a happier time than high school graduation. Love it. I mean, I feel like that's when our schools were putting out the best product that we had. They were the kids that stayed the course. And it was a lot harder for them because, I mean, if you go into some of their homes, I mean, there was nobody there helping them. There might be 7 or 8 siblings running around. I mean, it was a difficult environment. Many times they didn't even live with either parent. They'd live with, just a relative or maybe even a friend or an older brother or sister. So I love graduation. I love seeing those kids walk across the stage and just see the excitement. And I know you feel the same thing, and you should revel in this time because it's wonderful. I remember my own high school graduation. It's weird. I mean, my whole life, I don't know why, but from the time I was little, maybe I watched too many old westerns or something, but I wanted to be a tough guy. I did. Physical and mental toughness was so important to me. And playing football, that was really the only goal I ever had from the time I was a little guy. And unfortunately, God didn't see to bless me at a young age of being a big, strong person. So I got cut off the football team. I mean, now nobody cuts anybody. You don't make anybody feel bad, but back then they didn't care. They'd cut you. And I'm telling you, it put me in a miniature depression my 8th grade year. But it got me into lifting weights. I boxed. Everything I did was just geared to making me able to play football. And so I was fortunate enough to not only get to play, but to play on the greatest team in the nation that year. And I'll never forget it. But I'm sitting at my graduation, this self-styled tough person, tough guy. And I'm thinking, let's get this over with so we can get the party on. I'll never forget it. When I'm sitting out there, and we had about 600 kids in our graduating class, and there's speakers and stuff, but all of a sudden, it was almost a surreal experience. I'm starting to have flashbacks from 1st grade all the way to the present. And I didn't break into tears or anything, but it was just weird. It was just really a strange experience, and I've never forgotten it. I graduated from UT, but I didn't even get a ring. I didn't walk across any steps. I mean, it was just a means to an end, and I'm not, if you do though, it should be a big deal to you, but for some reason I already had a kid, been married for 2 years, and so I just buzzed right through that graduation, tried to find a job. But the high school graduation was a big thing. I think there's no other time. It's just such a transition. So I want you to enjoy this time, and parents enjoy it. You've done a great job raising the kids. All of you need to enjoy it. Now, I said I want to encourage you, so I do. I want you to go off, and most of you I know are going to go to college, and so that's a good thing. If you're not going to college, it doesn't matter. It's new beginnings. Whatever you're going to do, it's a good thing. I used to tell, there are no good or bad jobs unless you're a criminal. I used to tell all my kids, because a lot of them that I'm talking about, I even tell my own sons, they'll tell you this. I used to tell my boys and the kids I coached, I said, guys, I don't care what you do for a living as long as it's an honest job and you work hard. And I tell my boys this, Anthony can tell you. I said, I would tell them, literally, guys, I don't care if you ride on a trash truck. I said, I'm going to love you as long as you're doing the best you can and you're a good boy. I'm going to love you and I'm going to be proud of you. I mean, I think it's important, parents, and this is my only sermon to you, is to love. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but love your children unconditionally. Unconditionally. It should never be based on how good they do or what they do, what school they go to. You just love them. That's how I want to be loved by God. Man, if He doesn't love me unconditionally, I'm in big, big trouble. I can't live up to Him. There's no way. I'm just a guy that, I was thinking about this week. I don't know why. I guess I'll share it with you. I was thinking, I heard this somewhere, so I can't take credit for it. But I heard this. If it ever becomes against the law to be a Christian, I hope there's enough evidence to convict me. And that's kind of how I feel about myself. I hope there's enough evidence. Now, guys, I'm going to talk to the graduates now. And you're going to have a lot of freedom. Have y'all figured that out yet? More freedom than you've had? Raise your hand if you figured that out. I know when my boys, it wasn't like this when I went to school, but when my boys were in college, they never had classes on Friday. Couldn't figure that out. They'd schedule those classes in there. It was over on Thursday, and boy, on Thursday, then, boom. You're going to have a lot of freedom. And I remember that time too. I'd already started, like I told you, I was already in that party club when I was in high school. And I couldn't wait. I had a football scholarship to go to Tyler Junior College. And that was about 230 or 40 miles away from Austin. I thought, that's far enough where they can't just come see me every day. And so I was excited about that freedom. I already had plans in my mind of what I was going to do. I was excited about it. I want to tell you a little bit about my life, though. I grew up in the country on a farm. I got maybe the best parents in the world. My dad's 93, my mom's 87. They're still in relatively good health, their minds sharp. And they were the most amazing parents. One thing that as I was growing up, I was kind of felt like I had I don't know, young kids know who Leave It to Beaver is, you know. Everybody says, Leave It to Beaver life. That's kind of the way my life was up until I was about 11. And then when I was 11, my daddy told me something after a Little League baseball game. We were out there, come home. My mom went inside. I guess she knew what was coming. Never forget it. We were underneath the big old pecan tree that was in our yard. And my dad, he's probably not the best person to pick to tell somebody something like this, but he did the best he could. He got down, I remember, on one knee, and I was there standing, and he told me, he said, I got to tell you something. And he told me I was adopted. And I was 11. And I'll never forget it. It was like my body froze almost, and I couldn't even speak. I mean, I didn't even know how that was possible. I mean, for 11 years, I'd grown up thinking I was their child. And he was as sweet as he could be. And one thing he said, you know, they didn't want you, but we did. And it was weird. In spite of all the love that I felt all those years, and I knew in my heart my mom and dad loved me so much, all I heard was they didn't want you. And literally for my whole 6th grade year, I was in probably a clinical depression. But I kind of got out of it, you know. And not too long after, I guess when I was 15 or 16, I started really doing what a lot of kids do, man. I was kind of living a wild life, doing things. I mean, I was raised in church by these wonderful, kind, gentle people. But man, I was a wild man. And like I say, I signed that scholarship to go to Tyler Junior College, and I couldn't wait to get off the farm. And I got a song that is kind of weird, I guess, but I like songs and movies that kind of touch me. How do I play this, Anthony? If you don't like country music, just bear with me here. This is a song by Travis Tritt. It's called Where Corn Don't Grow. And I like it because it reminds me of my dad. It reminds me of me when I was 17. Get as loud as you can, Tom. I hope you'll be able to hear it. If you've heard it before, I told Anthony I brought my alarm clock that has a speaker on it, the docking station. I said, I'll bring that, Anthony. No, Dad, I got it taken care of. Well, we'll see. If he doesn't, I'll just have to read the words. I promise you I will not sing it. But I love this song because, there we go. Get it.
As we sat on the front porch of that old gray house where I was born and raised, staring at the dusty fields where my daddy worked hard every day, I and I said, Daddy, there's a lot that I don't know. Don't you ever dream about a life where corn don't grow? He just sat there silent, staring at his favorite coffee cup. I saw a storm of mixed emotion in his eye when he looked up. He said, son, I know at your age it seems like this whole world is turning slow, and you think you'll find the answer to it all where corn don't grow. Hard times are real, there's dusty fields no matter where you go. Son, you may change your mind, 'cause the weeds are high where corn don't grow. Feeling guilty when Daddy turned and walked back in the house. I was only 17 back then, but I thought that I knew more than I know now. And I can't say you didn't want me. The city life's a hard road to hoe.
I'm going to go ahead and read this just real quick. You get the message. He sings really good. I've seen him in person. He's got more talent than most of these guys that look really good in their Wranglers. He can sing, let me tell you. I'm not going to read it all, but I wanted you to hear this. It's about a 17-year-old kid that lived on a farm just like me. He said, I'm sorry, it's really crazy. Tough guys aren't supposed to cry, but every time I do this, I cry. I mean, I'm talking about come here to speak. I don't think I made it through 1 year without shedding a tear, if you've been here before. But he said, he was staring at the dusty fields where my daddy worked hard every day. I think it kind of hurt him when I said, Daddy, there's a lot that I don't know, but don't you ever dream about a life where corn don't grow. My dad's 93. He still raises corn that gets up above my head. He said he just sat there silent, staring at his favorite coffee cup. I saw a storm of mixed emotion in his eyes when he looked up. He said, son, I know at your age, seems like this whole world is turning slow. You think you'll find the answer to it all where corn don't grow. He says, hard times are real. There's dusty fields no matter where you go. You may change your mind because the weeds are high where corn don't grow. I remember feeling guilty when Daddy turned and walked back in the house. I was only 17 back then, but I thought that I knew more than I know now. I can't say he didn't warn me. This city life's a hard road to hoe. Ain't it funny how a dream can turn around where corn don't grow? Hard times are real. There's dusty fields no matter where you go. You may change your mind because the weeds are high where corn don't grow. I thought I wanted to go somewhere where corn didn't grow. I did my best. It didn't take long for me the weeds grew up way around me really quick. I tried to be just like my dad and raise my boys same kind of way. Take them to church, teach them the right things. And Keith was the first one. He went off to Lubbock to Texas Tech, and that was about 3 times as far as Tyler was. No, maybe not 3 times, but it's a long way. It's 7 hours from Austin, I think. I used to wonder, why do they want to go way out there? Boy, I forgot really quick. Everybody from the neighborhood wanted to go to Texas Tech, and I'm thinking, man, there's UT here, there's a lot of places closer than Lubbock. I didn't really realize you could really party good out there in Lubbock. And that boy, that's all he did. I think he was out there for 3 years. I'm not sure how many hours he earned, but it was, he might have had 1 year's worth of work done by the time 3 years. And anyway, he called me one night, or called us at home, me and my wife, and he said, Daddy, I'm in trouble. You've gotten in some trouble out there with the law. And so it was Sunday. I'll never forget it. I left to go out there. I said, son, I'll be out there. I'm coming. And I left. And like I say, it's 6.5 or 7 hours. And would you think it's possible for a grown man to cry that long, literally for 6.5 hours straight? I'm not exaggerating when I tell you it is possible. I remember it. And I went out there, and fortunately it turned out where it didn't ruin his life, and he went on. Not too long after, a year or two later, he became a different person. He started becoming a different person, but then he decided he wanted to join the Army, and he joined the Army. He was like 24, 25 years old, and he joined the Army, and I mean, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to him. Became a captain, and within 8 years, he was in Iraq when the war first started, driving it. He was a tank commander. He's a wonderful dad, wonderful person, but hurt really bad. Your own youth pastor over here, I would say he probably, he could tell some stories. I could tell you some stories. I'm not going to bother you with them, but he had some unique stories too, his first 2 years in college. But I remember the proudest I ever was of him was one night he'd given his life to the Lord. Similar circumstance, you know, he got into the weeds and he decided to bow his knee to the Lord. But he preached one night, not too far, just across the street from the stadium, this open air service, and there were hundreds of people there. And it was the proudest moment that I'd had up until that time of him in my whole life. I'm telling these things, young people, because, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that wanted to go where the corn didn't grow. I just want to tell you, your parents love you. Try to put yourself in their position just for a minute. And I just want to encourage you, don't get involved in anything, because there's stuff out there that can hurt you. You know there is. I've got I can't tell you how many of my friends were dead before we were 21. It was well into double digits. Guys that I went to high school with, they were either my age or a year in front or behind me. There's a lot of things out there. A lot of things that are going to be out there to try to hurt you. So just be careful and remember that your mom and dad love you. Oh, I'll try to figure out which notes I'm going to use here. Okay, here we go. I'm using the little ones I did. You're going to meet a lot of new friends. You're going to have a lot of different teachers when you get to college. And I finally gave my heart to the Lord at the end of my sophomore year. I'd gotten myself into some binds, and I finally bowed the knee to the Lord. And so after I left Tyler, I got a college scholarship to go to Texas Lutheran College. It's now TLU in Seguin. And I was a Christian when I was there, but I was a brand new Christian. You're going to learn a lot of new ideas, and I'm going to tell you some of the things that you're going to learn in college. You're going to learn a lot of good things in college. But there's going to be some things that will try to destroy your faith too. I can almost guarantee you. There were over 40 years ago. I think I was at TLU in 1973, so do the math. That's like 41 years ago or 40 years ago. And I remember I was really excited because I was a brand new Christian, and everybody had to take one religion course at least because it was a Lutheran school. And I was excited. I'm thinking, boy, this is going to be great. I'm going to learn about the Bible. So I was really excited about this opportunity to take this class. I had to take it anyway. So I get in there, and there's other kids from all over the state of Texas and even from outside the state. And they had a professor in there. He was Dr. I remember his name. I won't tell you. Somebody may know him. He's probably dead by now. But Anyway, he was in there and he had tons of degrees behind his name. Very impressive. Very, very impressive. But from day one, I'd have to say that my faith and the faith of everybody else in there was totally attacked by this man. I don't understand why he would bother getting a divinity degree or studying the Bible, because literally he believed nothing in the Bible was authentic. He thought it was just kind of a halfway decent history book. By that I mean he believed absolutely none of the miracles were true. He told us to our face. And I remember I would get mad. Even though I got saved and gave my heart to the Lord, even to this day, I'm telling you, I won't go into that, but I really wanted to take him outside sometime, because he would tell us that Jesus was not born of a virgin. He would tell us that he questioned there was no bodily resurrection. The Dead Sea, that was just a total myth. Parting, that didn't happen. I mean, everything. He believed nothing. And I remember seeing a lot of the kids in there. They came from all different denominational backgrounds. And I saw some of them, they'd be nodding their heads like, oh, wow, so that's what it means. And then others of us, I could see were perplexed. And I would argue with him frequently in class and even after class. And he would look at me like, he would give me this benign smile like, you poor moron. I feel sorry for you. And it really bothered me, because I was such a young Christian that I have to admit, I didn't want to think these thoughts, but I'm thinking, this guy's a lot smarter than me. What if he's right? What if I am believing fables? And so I didn't know where else to go. I played for a man, some of you gentlemen may remember him. His name was Jim Wacker. Tremendous football coach, tremendous person. He was a big 6'6" redheaded guy from somewhere up north. I can't remember if he was from Minnesota. I think he might have been from Minnesota. But he had this booming voice. And I'm from Texas. I wasn't used to being around people like him. And we used to kind of laugh, in the dorm, say, whoa. And he had all these different sayings that we'd never heard in Texas, He didn't say y'all, of course. He'd call me Denny, and he'd say, geez, oh, Pete. He had all these sayings that were just hilarious. And he would race us when we would run in wind sprints, this big old 6'6" redheaded guy. But he was just a bundle of enthusiasm. And I knew he was a Christian because his dad was a Lutheran minister, and he would tell us things all the time when he talked to us. So I felt like, I got to go to Coach Wacker. He was actually my counselor. At that time, you had to double dip. You either had to be a teacher and a coach at college. Well, he was a counselor. He was my counselor. And I went to Coach Wacker and I said, Coach, I told him about what this guy was teaching us, and he was looking at me like he couldn't believe it. Then all of a sudden, he just burst out laughing. Big booming laugh. He had this booming laugh. And it was infectious. And I started kind of laughing too. I said, what's so funny, Coach? This is all he said to me. He said, Denny, let that guy say whatever he wants to say. He said, this is what he said. But we know the truth, don't we? That's all he said. And I'll never forget it. Somebody was talking about how bright the sun shone. I remember going outside. It was in the spring, about this time. It was right after or before spring training. And the sun never seemed brighter to me. And I remember telling God this one thing. I still had doubts that had been placed in my mind, but I told God this. I said, Lord, I don't know how I'm going to do it. But I said, this day, I choose to believe every word in your book. Right here and right now. And it wasn't like the sky parted or there was a thunderbolt or anything, but I can tell you from that day forward, all the doubts were little by little systematically erased from my mind and my heart. I tore my knee up in that spring training shortly thereafter and had a really devastating knee injury, and I got married shortly thereafter, and so I decided to quit playing football. I wasn't going to the NFL or anything. And so I wanted to finish my degree, and so it was cheaper for me to come back to the University of Texas because I lived in Austin. And I remember when I got to UT, one of the first things I saw was on the outside of one of the buildings. It says, it's still there, it says, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. It's quoted from the Bible, from John, the book of John. I thought, that's neat. I learned a lot of great things at the University of Texas. I did. It helped me learn how to be a coach and a lot of good things. But I'll tell you something. I never learned any real truth like what that scripture was talking about. I want to show you something here if I can find it. I'd better have this because this was the most important thing I brought today. Here it is. You in the back probably can't see what this is. This is something my little grandson, Slade, Keith, my oldest boy's little boy, he turned 6 today. Today's his 6th birthday. He drew this right after Easter. And it's a wooden cross, and he just drew it on his own. And he showed it to his daddy. He brought it to his daddy. And he said, here, Daddy. And he didn't say anything about it. And my son looked at it, and he could tell it was a cross, a wooden cross. And he could tell that that was his rendition of Jesus. But what was amazing about it was there were 3 red marks on this little figure that he drew. And he said, Slade? He said, what are those red marks? And he said, that's where they stuck Jesus and made him bleed. And I thought to myself, that little guy learned something that's the most profound fact in the world. And you'll never learn anything in college more profound than that, folks. You'll never learn anything that helps you more than that. John 3:16 and 17 says, we all know it, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. 17 says, for God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. That's just as good as news as 16. Those 2 scriptures right there, you'll never learn anything at any level, any higher level of education than that. The last thing I want to do, I've warned you, now I want to exhort you. I want to exhort you to contend for the faith. The book of Jude, I wrote it down, it's Jude 1:3. It talks about contending for the faith. I'm going to encourage you, when you go to college, don't just keep your faith under a bushel basket. There's a song when I was a kid that talked about that. Contend for the faith. I don't mean you have to get on the mall somewhere at your college and be an open-air preacher, but there'll be opportunities for you to do just what the kids did today, to share your faith with someone. You don't have to wear it on your sleeve, but I'm going to tell you this. Jesus isn't somebody you have to be ashamed of knowing. You don't have to be ashamed of knowing him. When I was in college, I remember at UT, it was in my senior year, and I had taken an education class. It was a media class, and they taught you how to teach kids through film and stuff like that. And back then it was very different than now. Now you do PowerPoint presentation. Back then they taught you how to do a slide presentation. And I remember the Lord impressing upon me in this education class to do a slide presentation on my faith. And so we took pictures. My wife helped me, and different friends helped me. And I did this presentation on my faith. And I was wondering how it would be received. And I remember sitting at the back of the room as it was going. And you kids don't even know what a slide presentation is, but it's kind of like a PowerPoint, but like ancient. It's just still pictures. But anyway, it was a presentation, kind of my testimony. And I remember sitting in the back of the room and tears kind of welling up in my eyes. And I think for me that day, that was kind of like me crossing the line, never to come back. So I don't know how the Lord will do it, but I pray he'll give you a line somewhere that you're going to cross, one that you can never come back on. The other thing I'm going to challenge you to do is to be sensitive. Ask the Lord to make you sensitive to the invisible people. Do you know who invisible people are? I never saw them when I was in high school. Never saw them. There's a lot of them out there. There's going to be a lot of them at college. You won't see them unless you ask the Lord to show them to you. They're the people that have problems and that nobody else really wants to associate with. There was a little boy the other day, we were at Black Eyed Pea, me and my wife, and I'd already seen him one other time, and he was kind of an odd little guy, and I guess they gave him a job there just to keep him busy, and he would kind of greet you, and he was a strange little guy. He's about 21, I think. And I could just tell a lot of people were kind of snicker at him and things like that, and I don't know why, I just started talking to him. And I found out he loved movies, and so we started talking about he loved The Godfather, and so I like it too, and so we're talking about that. And so now every time I go in there, he comes up to me and wants to talk, and my wife, she hadn't been there with me when I talked to him before, and she said, who in the world is that? And my wife's very kind, but she just wondered, how do you even know this kid? And I said, he's just an invisible person, Teresa. She knew what I was talking about. I'm going to close up now. I think I'm closing. Yeah, I am. You know, I want to say this. This will be the last time I'll be here. Bear with me just for a second. You know, this will be the last time I'll be here. It's no secret, Anthony and Jennifer are going to be leaving. One of the movies that I really love, the new movies, or the miniseries, is the Bible. One of my favorite parts in it is at the end, after Jesus has arose from the dead. He's met with his disciples. He's gone back up into heaven, and they're left there together still. And they're ministering throughout Jerusalem, and there's starting to be persecution there. And I think they all feel that the Holy Spirit wants them to leave and to disperse and to spread out. And so there's kind of a tearful goodbye if you've seen this movie. They're hugging each other. Thomas is going here. Peter is going to minister here. Someone else is going here. They're all leaving. And the last one that I remember seeing that was the most poignant of all is when you see the Apostle John on the Isle of Patmos. And my son Carl has been there, and it's just an island in the sea. Rugged island, rocky island, not much on it. Caves on the island, and John lived in a cave. And when I was watching that movie, I was thinking to myself, what did John feel like all alone there? What did all the disciples feel when they dispersed? And they all suffered martyrdom for the cause of Christ except for John. And the movie alluded that they tried to attempt to assassinate him, but they failed. And so they put him on the Isle of Patmos instead. But all of them went through hard times. Do you ever wonder if during those times when they were apart, if they ever wished for the good old days? If they ever thought, man, remember how it was when all 12 of us were together and we were in the presence of the Lord? That must have been something. I think John especially, because he lived the longest, he must have been in that cave thinking, man, I wished I could see Peter again. Wished I could see James. Wished I could see Andrew. All alone. And then all of a sudden, an angel appears. And he is scared. And he hits his knees and he tries to worship the angel. And I love how the angel says, man, don't worship me. I'm just like you. But then one appeared, and I want to read this to you. It says, when he was at his loneliest, a time when he probably was depressed, someone entered the cave who announced himself as the Alpha and Omega. His appearance was stunning and frightening. His head and hair were white as wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. And when John saw him, it says he fell at his feet as if he were dead. But then Jesus laid his hand on John's head and said, fear not, I'm he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I'm alive forevermore. Where am I going with this? In a similar fashion, Anthony and Jennifer and all of you are being called to separate, to go out into the world, and to proclaim that the one who is dead that's alive forevermore, he needs to be proclaimed in other places. In keeping with that, one of my other all-time favorite movies is the miniseries Lonesome Dove. How many seen Lonesome Dove? Anybody? Not near enough. How many of you were born in Texas? You're born in Texas, raise your hand. Well, not all of you. Well, anyway, if you're born in Texas, I kind of think it ought to be required watching. And if you don't watch it, you probably ought to move to New Jersey or something. And if you moved here, you ought to watch it for the fact that you'll now maybe know why when people that were born in Texas, when we go abroad, if we're visiting, other countries or whatever, and someone asks you, where are you from, mate? We don't say the United States. Say, I'm from Texas, son. Anyway, I love that movie. And if you've never seen it, it's a story of 4 former Texas Rangers, and they're fairly old men now, and they own a place right down on the Rio Grande River. And it centers around these 4 guys and the illegitimate son of one of the Texas Rangers. And it's masterfully, the acting is amazing. It's got Tommy Lee Jones, Robert Duvall, Danny Glover, Rick Schroeder, and then Diane Lane. I mean, it's the most really amazing miniseries, 6 hours. So every year, me and my son Aunt Carl would stay up all night and watch it during the summer. But one of the most poignant scenes is at the end, and they've taken this long, dangerous cattle drive all the way to Montana. They're going to build the first ranch in Montana, cattle ranch. And on the way, some disasters happen. Many disasters happen. All kind of things happen. One of the things, they hang one of their friends, not one of the 4, but this other guy that was a Texas Ranger because he fell in with some murderers, and they hung all of them, even their friend. 2 of the guys end up getting killed. One of them was Danny Glover's role. He was trying to help this little blind Indian boy, and a young Indian brave didn't know, and he threw a spear right through him. Robert Duvall's character gets shot in the leg by Indians, and he won't let them cut both of his legs off, so he dies. And all this stuff happens. And Tommy Lee Jones promises Robert Duvall he's going to take him back to Texas because he wants to be buried in Texas. So Tommy Lee Jones promises him, and he's going to take him back to Texas. Well, at the end, the very end of the movie, he goes back to Lonesome Dove. He's just buried his friend. He kept his word. And Captain Call is his name. And he's a man of few words. Rick Schroeder's his illegitimate son, and he loves him. I mean, he loves him, but he never gives him his name. He gives him his horse, but not his name. He said, I put more value on my horse than my name. But he's back in Lonesome Dove, and he's walking down the street there, and it's changed a lot. I mean, it's a small town. It couldn't change that much, but there were some changes. Anyway, this young reporter from San Antonio comes up to him. He's a famous guy. He's a famous Texas Ranger. And what he's done by bringing, it's like almost nationwide news that he's bringing his friend all the way back to Texas. And this guy's bugging him. This young reporter comes up to him. And like I say, he's a man of few words. He's not somebody you want to trifle with. But this guy's bugging him. And he says, Captain Call, they say you're this, they say you're that. And he keeps saying, give me an interview. Please give me an interview. He keeps saying, no, no. That's all he says, basically. And finally, the kid says this. As he strolls through town, a young newspaper reporter from San Antonio, that's what I told you there, he says, as the young man continues to beg him for a story, he blurts out, they say you're a man of vision. Is that true? Captain Call stops walking and without looking at the young man says, a man's vision, you say? Yeah, hell of a vision. And as he says that, you see all these different scenes whirling through his head. His 2 friends dying, his son fighting Indians, getting finally to Montana. All these scenes are whirling through his head as the movie ends. And it always, I don't know why, it's a very emotional scene for me. Because, I mean, here's this guy, tears welling up his eye, the toughest guy ever. And I thought, pretty soon there's going to be some, do you have my phone, Anthony? Anyway, pretty soon there's going to be some scenes whirling through a couple people's heads. Visions of mountaintops in Colorado, Catalina Island. I don't even know where all y'all have gone on trips. These scenes are going to whirl through their head. They're going to think about all the wonderful faces of all the kids. They're going to think about staff members that are more like family than co-workers. I just want to thank y'all for giving Anthony and Jennifer the opportunity to minister, but most of all, thank you for loving them, and Graham and Corey and little Hudson. Thank you for all the love you've given them. I appreciate it. And again, thank you for bearing with me today. I appreciate it.